Okay,
Yeah.
that's
So,
wonderful.
yeah. Hi, everyone. And yeah, just a thanks for inviting me to speak tonight and just really talk about. I was asked to really speak about the power of plant based nutrition. It's an area that I've certainly spent the last decade or so really gaining my own education. Excuse me, education around and providing now treatment to the patients that we see through our lifestyle medicine practice at Spectrum Health. Actually, that's just now opening officially in January. So that's my big exciting announcement this evening. But leading up to this, we've been doing, over the last 4 years, really work in culinary medicine. We launched a program initially to train our own physicians, um, medical residents as they go through training, oftentimes get very little nutritional education. And so, while we may come out with a fund of knowledge, nutrition is often one area that physicians are particularly lacking in. And it requires really having a curiosity, I think, personally about it in order to become fully educated. But once you kind of crack open that door, you realize that there is just a um, irrefutable amount of evidence that points to the power of plant-based nutrition to not only prevent disease but also reverse most, I would say, of our chronic diseases. So it's a science-based approach. It's more powerful than pills or procedures. The side effects are typically that you have weight loss, feel better, sleep better. So you have fantastic side effects usually as well. And that's been my own personal experience, myself and my family. I have 3 children of my own. We just heard, I have my husband's a physician. We follow a plant-based diet. Our children are mostly plant-based. It's, you also have to have flexibility in the world. And so I think rather than having this dogma approach, it's oftentimes more approachable to model good behavior for your patients and your children. And then, let people make their decisions when they're ready to really invest in their health so that they can sustain it for a lifetime. So that's really the approach that I take. And would it be helpful to have some slides and kind of a presentation? Yes? Okay.
Yes, I think so, don't you,
Okay.
everybody? Yep.
All right, let's do it. Okay. I will share my screen here.
It's really exciting what's coming down the pike for you there. I hope it's embraced.
Yeah, we have been really happily surprised at the amount of interest. And are you seeing my slides here?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Everybody else, yep.
Okay, good. All right. So, yeah, I wasn't sure exactly who might be in our audience this evening. I understood we could have some healthcare professionals and, community members as well. So, I have a little bit of the science in here, certainly, but then also more of that food-based approach as to how do we implement a very nutrient-dense diet that's focused on plants and why we would do that, in particular around cardiovascular disease. However, I would say that, again, the beauty of a plant-based diet is that when you implement it, not only can you improve cardiovascular disease and reduce risk for heart attack and stroke and kidney failure, but you can also then help better manage or reverse diabetes sometimes. You can better manage a lot of the joint disease that we see that's so common. Certainly, autoimmune disease responds quite well to plant-based diet. And the list goes on and on. So truly, this doesn't even need to say cardiovascular disease. It could really say chronic disease. So, I'd like you all to think about it in that way. As we move through some of the science here. I'm actually an emergency medicine physician by training. I still work in our emergency departments. So I see patients who have suffered from chronic disease for most of their life or decades. And oftentimes at their worst moment, where they require hospitalization or a procedure or a cardiac cath emergently or something along those lines. And really, that's where my passion is around prevention, because I've taken care of so many patients who did not need to suffer in that way. And there's so much more that we could have done and should be doing upstream of the illness to help them have better knowledge and skills to better care for their health. But even when you have a diagnosis of cardiovascular disease, or if you've had a stroke or a TIA or something along those lines, there's still an immense amount of power to begin to reverse that disease process, even if it's quite advanced. So I have undergone specialty training in lifestyle medicine, and that's what so I'm a diplomate of the American Board of Lifestyle Medicine, and it's an amazing organization. I encourage you, especially if you're a healthcare provider and you're interested in treating patients with lifestyle as medicine, rather than this, first thing that we're told we should do. That's where we should really lean in and spend all of our time to really help our patients achieve more optimal health. So we're going to look at dietary patterns quickly. We'll talk about then some nutrients and this idea of the food matrix, and that's really where the magic happens, so to speak, with plant-based nutrition. So we start here. I call this the lose-lose diet, because when we follow the standard American diet, it's a loss for personal health, but it's also a loss for planetary health. And I think that is another really driving force for me, that I see that clear link between the food that we eat and the health of the planet. And the steps that we can take personally. It's great if you can have a very fuel efficient car, but you can also be very fuel efficient as a eater and eat closer to what's grown on the ground, rather than eating animals that eat food that is grown on the ground. Take out the middleman, so to speak. So we can improve our health personally. And we know the standard American diet is really incredibly toxic to our health. It's comprised of a lot of highly processed foods, in addition to those animal-based foods, particularly dairy products as well. And our bodies really struggle to regulate how we metabolize these foods, how we, and fully digest them. And then, of course, the downstream effects of when we eat food like this, it just creates this massive inflammatory response in our body and oxidative stress. And that ultimately is what drives a lot of our chronic disease. And again, as I was talking about earlier, if we think about plant-based nutrition and the title of this talk around cardiovascular disease, when in fact all of these processes are way more similar than they are different. It's just that within kind of Western medicine, we subspecialize. So, the cardiovascular disease is cared for by the cardiologist, and the kidney disease by the nephrologist, when in fact, it's a disease process of the vessels, the blood vessels that supply these organs. And the same could hold true even for a lot of our neurologic diseases, so stroke and a lot of the what we call vascular dementia. So when we start to have cognitive decline as we age, it's not necessarily a natural process. We don't need to lose our mental faculties as we age, especially as we follow optimal lifestyle habits, including a mostly plant-based diet. So the other big thing is terminology. A lot of people get really hung up on terminology, and are you a vegan? Are you? Well, yes, but I'm what I truly am is a person who enjoys eating foods as grown or whole plant foods. I find it can be really a mountain to climb with many individuals when they hear about vegan or vegetarian diets, and it immediately is off-putting and they don't want to have a conversation. But rather focusing on the foods that are enjoyed on a whole food plant-based diet, I think is really the place to begin when someone's willing to listen. And that's the other thing I've learned is to, um, when we're in, I don't, previously when we're able to share meals with others, and see our friends and our family more often, to always bring a dish to share, especially those who kind of challenge the idea of a plant-based diet, who are, classic meat eaters and are unwilling to change. Um, I've learned to not really engage in that conversation unless someone is ready to ask questions, because it usually ends up a very defensive conversation, and we don't make much progress. So I find that food is kind of the path forward, so that everyone can enjoy sort of the amazing taste and beauty that whole plant foods can really provide. Um, and you can design an entire diet around it. We know there are a lot of factors that influence our food choices, and certainly at a healthcare organization like Spectrum Health, that we try to look at this and how can we intervene, in different levels, understanding where a person is coming from. Do they have knowledge about nutrition? A lot of children don't even know how food is grown in the ground, that carrots, are in the soil under the ground. So, even just getting at some of these basics can be really important. And we do have programs, one in particular called Family Kitchen RX, um, where the child is the referred patient, and we work with the entire family to really try to help improve the quality of the diet that the family and the child is eating. We need to think about availability and the price of the ingredients. That's always critically important. The palatability. And again, when we start with, that's really the idea of culinary medicine, is we want to build skills around how do we prepare delicious whole foods, but we also want to use cooking techniques and spices, and eating seasonally, because the foods are so delicious at certain times of the year. Um, so, uh, if you're familiar with the blue zones, I think that's a really nice example of what we can learn from other cultural approaches to a plant-based diet, and what we can learn from these areas around the world where there's a high percentage of centenarians, or individuals who live to 100 years plus, who are healthy and vital and active, who take very few medications, and who have maintained their mental faculties so they're not suffering from dementia. And what we see is that the commonalities between these cultures around the world, some being in Italy, one in Japan, one in Loma Linda, California. We have one blue zone in the United States, one in Costa Rica. And while their cuisines may vary in the taste and the spices that are being used, the base of the diet is really quite similar. So it's usually based on plants, whole plant foods, and beans that would be sort of native to that culture, or that cultural diet. And then the other important things that we know really drive health over a lifetime, that social connectedness, staying physically active. It doesn't mean you have to go to a gym, but you move your body in ways that are natural, and that you enjoy. And you do that every day. So we have a lot to learn. So I would highly recommend Blue Zones if you haven't read it. It's just a really fascinating read. So I said a couple things about the studies. I thought I would highlight a couple, but we won't spend a whole lot of time here. But you can see the power of plant-based nutrition when we look at some of these studies. So this one that was published in 2008, they looked at 3 particular diet patterns. One was a Western diet, one was a more Asian type diet that was focused on soy foods and other whole foods. And then they had a really vegetarian diet. And not surprisingly, when they compared the standard American diet or the Western diet, that really could predict a population risk of about 30% for acute myocardial infarction or heart attack. So you start to see at the level of populations, it's diets that are really driving a lot of our, at least, cardiovascular disease. This is a nice diagram from the Journal of the American College of Cardiology that talks about primordial prevention. And what that means is preventing the risk factors that drive cardiovascular disease. So the risk factors being things that you've heard about, hypertension and high cholesterol and diabetes. So how do we start to, again, come upstream of the illness and begin to prevent it? And you see that this very plant forward dietary approach is where we need to be moving. So if you look at the arrow that's in the blue boxes towards the top, you can see the more standard American diet pattern with the processed meats and the refined grains and the added sugars. That's really going to be driving disease. And then if we eat this more whole food, plant based approach, we can certainly start to reduce that risk of cardiovascular disease. Another really nice demonstration, and I think the American College of Cardiology and the Journal of the American College of Cardiology has done some really great reviews of nutritional controversies and has put together these nice diagrams to really illustrate the evidence toward eating a more whole food plant-based diet, so that there's strong evidence that when we eat things like blueberries and other dark, purple, red berries, if we eat green leafy vegetables, if we consume nuts and seeds, that these are foods that are really supporting our health. We know, again, when we're thinking about that food matrix, what I mean by that is if you take the whole food, when we have a supplement, for example, a pharmaceutical company will try to extract that one nutrient, when in fact that food matrix is that complexity of the entire food is oftentimes what can never be recreated in a pill. And so that's really where we get the benefit from the whole food. It's this combination of the phytonutrients and the fiber and the water that's really providing that nutrition to our bodies and preventing disease. This study looked at cardiovascular disease risk in women, and I really like this illustration because that's the other interesting thing about nutrition studies is sometimes a study will be done on eggs, for example, and they say, oh, eggs, don't, it's not associated at all with cardiovascular disease. And I'm just using that as an example, when in fact, what did they replace the egg with? And that's where a lot of the confusion can become, really prominent in these nutritional studies. So this one is quite fun to look at. So if you eat beans for fish, you actually have a risk reduction. So we start to see, again, even fish, which has kind of been given this halo of being great for cardiovascular disease, your risk actually improves when you eat more beans and use the beans in place of fish. And not surprisingly, beans for red meat, again, we have a quite significant risk reduction for cardiovascular disease. So that's oftentimes where, as a physician, I can start to help patients, when they're ready to make changes in the diet, we can start by making some of these high value changes with different foods and trying to replace some of those foods that we know are really going to cause disease with different foods, these whole plant foods that can really protect them from disease. I mentioned that fiber is only found in plant foods. And again, that's sometimes a new concept to individuals, and it's not found in animal products. And so we need to realize that fiber protects our bodies from cardiovascular disease, diabetes, certain types of cancer. And as we see here, we can have a pretty significant decrease in, again, incidence of cardiovascular disease the more fiber we eat. So obviously we're eating then more plant foods as we increase our fiber intake. This is demonstrated here as well in terms of reducing our risk for cardiovascular disease as we consume more fiber. And a typical standard American diet will oftentimes only have about 10 grams of fiber. The recommendation is, at least double that. And so most Americans are not eating nearly the amount even of recommended dietary fiber. But someone who is eating a whole food plant-based diet can easily get about 40 grams of fiber, and it's pretty typical that you're eating 50 to 60 grams of fiber in a day. And that's, you're not trying to do it, it just happens easily when you're basing your diet on whole plant foods. I love this quote, and I think it's totally true. Um, it's perfect. I mean, this is
Yeah.
truly what we see when we a lot, even children, they suffer from constipation. Many of those children often then start having massive, increases in weight. We're seeing so much type 2 diabetes in children. But this idea that, the health of your bowel movements can actually, I think it should be a vital sign, because I think it is really telling us, just like blood pressure and just like your heart rate, it's telling us something about what's happening in the body. Um, this is an interesting concept that I think we'll see more and more research around, is that it's not just saturated fat or fiber, it's also these metabolites that happen as our body starts to digest foods that are eaten. So this TMAO it's trimethylamine N oxide, and it's formed when we eat foods that are high in carnitine, like poultry and eggs. And as it's metabolized in the gut by our gut bacteria, it actually then produces this TMAO, which can then go on and cause damage in our vessels. So we're now starting to understand that TMAO is independently linked to cardiovascular disease, because it starts that plaque formation that we see in the blood vessels. So another reason that, trying to reduce or eliminate, red meats and chickens and things like that from your diet, especially if you've already been diagnosed with cardiovascular disease, this may be one other reason why that's important. In speaking about the blood vessels, so the lining of the blood vessels is called the endothelium. And we know through lots of science that we can actually start to repair damage that's been done to the endothelium. And that's important because, again, when we think about plaques being formed in the blood vessels that are in our heart or in our brain or in our kidneys, that if we're able to start to repair that damage, then hopefully we can prevent things happening down the road, like a stroke or a heart attack or kidney failure. And the way that a whole food plant-based diet can actually start that repair process is by the phytonutrients and the antioxidants that are contained within the food. When we eat whole plant foods, we actually don't produce the TMAO that we were just talking about, because we have different gut bacteria that thrive on fiber that's found in plant food. So we're not even creating this toxic metabolite. We can see improvement in LDL levels, and then this endothelial progenitor cell. We need these healthy cells lining our blood vessels so that we can create the nitric oxide to actually help our blood vessels dilate. For example, when we exercise, we run up a flight of steps, things like that. I want to switch into talking about other concepts around plant-based eating and why it's so beneficial, particularly when we think about, a healthy weight and maintaining a healthy weight over a lifetime. Is that plant foods are naturally low in calories. So this calorie density approach to eating is really, I truly believe this statement by Jeff Novick, who has spoken at many conferences about this, that it's just the most simple way to understand how to eat a healthful diet, where you don't need to be counting calories. You can almost eat essentially until you're full with these foods that are naturally low in calories. So what does that look like? And this diagram, I think, always um, shows that concept quite well. So if you look to the far left, where the green arrows are, we see our foods that are naturally high in nutrients, but low in calories. And these, not surprisingly, are whole plant foods, because our plant foods have a lot of fiber and water. And then we have our green leafy vegetables that are incredibly nutrient dense. And then we move into our other types of vegetables and mushrooms. We see that as we start to get toward those red arrows, things like avocados, nuts, soy, they are more calorie dense. So they have more calories per pound of food, but they're still, healthy foods to eat. We just may need to monitor the quantities a little bit more of those types of foods. But the other place that I think it's important to see this is that all the way to the far right, we see oil listed. And a lot of people think, oh, I follow a Mediterranean diet, I'm eating healthy, I have olive oil. But start considering olive oil and other oils as being processed foods, because that's what they are. They, all the fiber has been stripped from those foods. They do sometimes have, if you get a high quality olive oil, you can still have some phytonutrients in there. But it's all fat. So it's just in fat calories, have more calories per gram. So while you can probably use oils sparingly, it depends on, your current health status. Are you someone with cardiovascular disease or overweight or obesity and looking to optimize those conditions? Then we can start to see where there may be a role to reducing our cooking oils or eliminating them completely, which has shown to be effective as well. This is just another demonstration of calorie density and why it's so effective. And we see oil, it doesn't allow our stomach to activate the stretch receptors. So when we eat things like potato chips and, they have lots of oil, they have lots of calories, they don't fill up our stomach. We don't activate those stretch receptors that go to our brain and tell us we're full and we don't need any more food. But in fact, fruits and vegetables with our high amount of fiber and water, we can eat, quite large quantities. It activates those stretch receptors, but at the same time, we're not eating very many calories at that time, but we're getting a lot of nutrients from that food. Just a couple of high value plant foods. So nutrient dense plant proteins, the question, where do I get my protein from on a plant-based diet? Well, from beans, legumes, whole grains, nuts, seeds, and not just protein in a legume, but also folate and B vitamins and these resistant starches that are so helpful to our gut bacteria. So I eat beans every single day. I like them in soups, in power bowls. I put them in pastas, salads, every way you can think, and different variety. Just try different beans until you find the ones that you enjoy. Berries are going to be another high value food. And obviously this time of the year, they're not in season around us, but frozen berries can be an excellent source. So we can find some really high quality organic berries. You can get them in bulk packages, oftentimes at the supermarket. And then we can really, oftentimes those frozen berries too are picked at peak ripeness. They're flash frozen, so they retain a lot of that nutrient quality. So it's a great choice this time of the year. And they're high in antioxidants, all these other micronutrients that our body needs, and these polyphenols and flavonoids are really helpful to fight disease throughout our body. This particular study, just 3 servings a week, and you can start to reduce your risk of myocardial infarction. So again, they're delicious and they really fight disease. So I have them most mornings on a bowl of oatmeal with some flaxseed and walnuts and a little bit of soy milk. I like them on salads as well. I have them for dessert. So all types of different ways that you can have them and enjoy berries throughout the year. And of course, green leafy vegetables. How could we have a talk on plant-based eating without a shout out to green leafy vegetables? So they are the most nutrient dense plant food that we can eat. Ideally, we consume them every day, multiple times a day, so that we can kind of flood our body with these amazing phytochemicals that are contained within the green leafy vegetable. Particularly for patients who may have high cholesterol, and if you're on a statin medication, you can actually have reduction in this coenzyme Q10 because you're on that statin medication. And nutrients from green leafy vegetables can actually help to boost that coenzyme Q10. So rather than taking it in supplement form, green leafy vegetables, once again, that whole food is going to be an optimal source, because then you're also then getting folate and calcium. You get some omega-3 fatty acids as well when you eat green leafy vegetables. So there's a variety that you can choose from. And again, seasonal. So we have more of our hardy winter greens right now. We belong to a year-round CSA, a farm share, and right now we're getting tons of beautiful hardy greens, right, that we're able to enjoy. So again, finding the ones that you like, but then also trying some of these different varieties that can be incredibly delicious. And again, not surprisingly, significant disease reduction when we include green leafy vegetables in our diet. So I wanted to share with you some of the patients that we're working with in lifestyle medicine at Spectrum Health. We use this really fun tool called Diet ID that can measure the quality of our patients' diets, and they take it as they enter into a program and at other points along the way as they go through treatment. And what we can see when we work with patients with a very plant-forward approach is that our actual patients have reduced their sugar intake by 2/3, have reduced their saturated fat intake by half, have reduced their sodium intake significantly, and look how much their fiber intake has increased. 3 times almost by this dietary intervention and this lifestyle medicine program that they've been involved with. And what we see when they've made these changes is that our patients have lost on average about 11 pounds, some up to 20 pounds. And this is in 8 weeks. And this is not a weight loss program. This is a lifestyle program that really helps patients move toward a more optimal diet that's centered on whole plant foods. Their cholesterol change has been remarkable. Some patients, a couple individuals, have dropped their total cholesterol by about 60 points in 8 weeks just through diet change. And some patients have completely come off of their medications as well. So we can help patients de-escalate their therapy, meaning that as we improve their diet and lifestyle habits, we see that they have their blood pressure drop dramatically. So we have to reduce it, and then we finally have to completely remove the medication because they no longer need it. And that's really, again, we're speaking to the power of plants. And this is primarily the diet change. We also are working with them on physical activity and stress reduction, mindfulness practices, but it's primarily the diet that's driving these changes that we're seeing. So Dr. David Katz, who has written extensively about food as medicine and has just really been a leader internationally around lifestyle medicine. I love this quote: just get the food right and the macronutrients will take care of themselves. If we do it the other way, then we explore all these ways of eating badly. So I would highly recommend this list of books if you're looking to learn more. Joel Fuhrman has been practicing nutritional-based medicine for decades and is just a wealth of information. Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn, who is just a pioneer in cardiovascular disease reversal with plant-based nutrition. And of course, Dr. Michael Greger, who you just gotta love him. He's does everything, just a fantastic person and brings the nutrition science to everyone. And his books are entertaining but full of knowledge, and gives people the tools that they need to adopt the why behind adopting a whole food plant-based diet. So we are opening our lifestyle medicine practice. As I mentioned, we're taking referrals and self-referrals now. The practice is located in the downtown market in the teaching kitchen. That's actually our medical group space where we see patients. We actually do point of care blood testing there, where you can work with our chef and our dietitian. We have health coaches and tobacco treatment specialists. We teach you with hands-on experiential learning in the teaching kitchen. We do this still with some of our patient programs in very small groups because we can adequately socially distance people safely within the teaching kitchen. But we also do this virtually all the time. So we have had, since COVID came to our community, we've had about 50 culinary medicine classes for our community, and for educating our own healthcare employees at the health system. So we interact with people in the virtual space all the time and try to make this as easy and accessible as it can be. We are having a plant powered challenge, and I challenge all of you tonight to register for this. We have lots of free programs, webinars that are available for this 4-week program. We'll have these lunch and learns, we'll have emails. So if you're registered into our plant powered challenge, then you'll receive our weekly email with tips and tricks and ways to optimize your diet. You can join our Lifestyle Medicine Facebook group where we're going to have all kinds of resources posted there. And you'll just really be plugged in with all the experts that are on our lifestyle medicine team to support you as you start to transition your diet. And yeah, and that's all I have. So I can leave up this contact info, or if you want this one here. But yeah, snap a photo, but go in and register. We'd love to have all of you involved. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Wonderful. Kristi, thank you. I'm one of those who needs to work on my diet. I am slowly transitioning, but it's the comfort food and the growing up with the mother who was a gourmet cook who loved to cook with butter and oils. So yeah, it's hard, but you're giving some support to people with all this, right?
Yeah, it can be hard to take those initial steps to change, but also the experiences that once you feel the change happening and you start to realize the comfort foods can actually be, many of them can be reimagined as plant-based dishes,
Right.
um, which is the fun part about it. So it can take time. A lot of times it doesn't happen overnight, but some of our more intensive programs can help you get there more quickly if that's needed for your health reasons, or more slowly if you're just, trying to better manage disease or prevent disease, for example. However, you're ready to make that change is the place to begin. And that's really the value there.
Hey, Kristi,
Yes.
what's that program that starts on the 4th? There was something in the way on your slide. I couldn't see
Oh,
that
yeah.
link. How do you connect with that?
We'll
Yeah.
post it on the Universal Health Solutions website as
Oh,
well.
I'll put it in the chat here too.
okay. Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Would you say also that just making one small change and then feeling a little more enthusiastic will help? I mean, I find that for myself, and it doesn't seem to be such a huge leap. And then do you think it's necessary, doctor, to do any kind of a fast program, or just do the intermittent fast where you stop eating like at 7 p.m. and then you don't eat breakfast until a little bit later in the
Oh,
morning?
100%. We should be doing that all the time. That's how our bodies are designed, that we should be not consuming food and calories for at least 12 hours, if not longer, every day. And it's interesting. It's kind of fashionable to say that that's fasting when in fact it's just kind of natural circadian rhythms that, after your last meal of the day, kitchen closes. That the only thing after that is, water or maybe some herbal teas. And it's definitely a practice that we follow in our own home. So even our children, that, everybody's had sufficient food throughout the day, that we've had our dinner, we've enjoyed it. And it's a great way to, your body needs time to rest without having to digest food.
Oh.
So absolutely, at a minimum, to bring that practice in of, trying to finish your meals. I know even tonight though, I'm going to be eating dinner after this, so I'm going to break my rule tonight, but usually we'll finish our dinner by 7 or 7:30, and then nothing until at least 7 or 9 a.m. is usually kind of about the time that I'll eat. Even if I'm working in the emergency department, if I bring a meal, I'll bring my oatmeal and, try to around 9 o'clock or something, sneak in a quick breakfast. But that's really a great way to begin. But then there's also a role potentially too, and this is another program that we have available through the lifestyle medicine practice, is I have some training and experience in medically supervised fasting, and we actually have some group programs to help patients safely and effectively go through a 5-day fasting protocol and then transition to a plant-based diet. And what that can help with when you have this more prolonged fast is to really allow your palate to reset. There's actually great science around how it can improve healthy longevity because it gives our cells time to heal and repair. But then what happens after that fast period is just as important. So that's when moving to that more optimal diet, that plant-based diet, is incredibly important. So that's another service that we have available through the lifestyle medicine practice as well. So if you're interested in that, give us a call.
Dr. Johnson told me that something like that, of fasting, really helps with the stem cells. Yeah, is that
Yep.
that?
Yeah, and all cells throughout our body we can kind of tap into these repair processes that are innate to our cells, that when we're digesting food and exposed to all these toxins in the environment, a lot of which come through our food, it then gives our body a chance to reset and repair. And it can really have fantastic effects on our overall health.
I've been drinking hot water with lemon in the morning. Is that also a good thing and throughout the day?
Absolutely. I mean, I think in general, what I've come to understand too, working with patients, is that many people struggle to drink water, which is fascinating. So, if it's warm, I think warm water with lemon is great. That's actually what I do during our cold, fall and winter months. I just find that really soothing. But just ensuring that, if you've done your overnight fast, so to speak, the first thing to have in the morning, not a cup of coffee, but make sure you're drinking at least 2 large glasses of water, really start to rehydrate your body before you then go on to eat a meal or, have tea or coffee or something along those lines.
And Maria, do we have any questions you can start filtering for us?
We did have one question. What foods do you recommend for people with scleroderma? I don't know if I said that.
So, yeah, I mean, again, some of the autoimmune diseases like scleroderma and others certainly can respond well to a whole food plant-based diet, but there may be complexities in that in terms of what you can tolerate when you first transition a diet, depending on how your swallowing is and your digestion when you begin. So again, a lot of these high nutrient foods like the berries and the greens, even some of them blended, I would say this time of the year, again, soups are going to be a really nice place. And soups are a mainstay of a whole food plant-based diet. That's what I'll be having tonight for dinner. I made a big pot of vegetable soup. I'll add some white beans to it, maybe some avocado on some whole grain bread with it. And that's essentially the dinner that we'll enjoy tonight. But yeah, so cooked vegetables, cooked cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower, cabbages, things like that can often be, really good nutrient dense foods for those with autoimmune disease as well.
I have a hard time eating Brussels sprouts. I can't, I've got one of those extra receptors. I can't, seriously, I cannot. And same with arugula. So
Mm.
that's not gonna like, cause a problem. I can eat more broccoli, right? That's
Well, there's other cruciferous vegetables, yes. So
worry about
certainly trying others that are more palatable to you. I'm seeing a question about beans raising blood levels for diabetics. Actually, what the studies show is that beans control blood levels and insulin levels remarkably well because of their high amount of fiber that they contain and those resistant starches, how they really enhance and protect the good bacteria in our gut. So beans are actually a fantastic whole plant food for those with diabetes. Some of the patients that I've seen and treated, some with type 1 diabetes, some with type 2, they do fantastic on whole food plant-based diets, which include beans every day.
And we have another question about some examples of what you eat for lunch and dinner.
Oh, sure. So I'm kind of boring, I guess, is that, yeah, I do tend to eat oats for breakfast, steel cut or whole oats with berries, flaxseed or chia seed, walnuts. So I try to get my plant-based sources of omega-3 fatty acids. I do most of that in the morning just because I enjoy it in the morning. And whatever other fresh fruit, I put that on my oats. Some people like more savory oats. That's not my preference, but a lot of people I know do enjoy that. For lunch, I usually will try to have some sort of green leafy vegetables. Today I had some leftover roasted butternut squash that was like curry spiced. I just roasted that with some Asian type greens that I quickly steamed, and half of an avocado. I'm thinking about what else was in that bowl that it was literally whatever was in my fridge. And it was beautiful and delicious, and it took no time. It was all leftover food. And then tonight it will be, and then I had a snack of an apple and some peanut butter today, tea and water throughout the day. And then I'll have some vegetable soup, and that'll kind of round it out, and maybe a little bit more fruit later. So that's kind of my typical day, what it would look like. If I'm on the go, I would oftentimes, and having to eat away from the home, then I'll oftentimes take those same veggies that were in that bowl and put them in a whole grain wrap and take that with me. Might put some hummus with it to kind of roll it up into that wrap. And that's actually what I'll take a lot when I'm working long days in the hospital, because it's just easy, always tastes delicious, and yeah, it's just a go-to. And I love mason jars also is the other thing. So mason jars are great because you can, create the overnight oats in them, and then you can take the lid off, pop it in a microwave, and it's easy. You can transport it really easily. So we use mason jars we'll make some vegetable curries oftentimes on the weekend, and then have leftovers for lunches where we'll have the curry on the bottom, and then put some rice on top, like a brown rice. And then my husband can take that, on his way out the door for lunch. So we do a lot of, grains and rice and vegetables, different ways that we prepare them.
Have you heard of anything of people with O blood type like myself needing meat? Like it just seems.
Yeah, everything I've read about blood type diets is that they're not really founded in good science. So there's no scientific evidence to truly support that certain blood types require different diet types. So I really can't say much more about it, except there hasn't been any well-founded studies that really prove that to be, something we need to consider.
I just made some vegetable soup, but I I used organic beef broth.
Mhm.
So
Well,
do you,
the other thing that is easy is when you're trimming vegetables, and I do this at home, is I have a container, or I'll keep a container in the freezer, and the ends of carrots and the ends of celery, the ends of parsley that I chop, all that I'll put in the freezer container, and then when I'm home on a weekend, just put it all and just make a nice vegetable stock,
oh,
and strain it. So then you're reusing all vegetables that would otherwise get tossed or put in the compost, and can make a really delicious veggie broth, for no cost. Yeah. So, and then I'll make soups and grains that way. And then I'll freeze them in the mason jars. So it all kind of like goes full circle. Yeah. Do you think meal prepping with plant-based eating, or should we be making time to cut up and cook? Oh, I think meal prepping is great. I mean, I certainly don't cook every single day. I probably cook 3, 4 days a week, and then the other days eat leftovers. So, we all have to find what works for us. And you definitely can meal prep. And again, frozen fruits and vegetables, if they don't have anything added to them, can be a great option that's quick and easy, so that when you don't have a lot of fresh vegetables or fruits at home. I actually locally used organics, that delivery of fresh fruits and vegetables, and they have other items now as well, but mine is delivered every Wednesday, so I kind of plan a lot of my meals and things, and know that we're going to get that supply of fresh fruits and vegetables on Wednesdays, and then usually one trip to the store, usually over the weekend or around the weekend, to try to make it through to the next Wednesday when we get more of the fresh foods. But definitely meal prepping, cooking a soup, so that you can have that for many meals throughout the week. Oh yeah, we have another Dorganics. Awesome.
I'm gonna try that out.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, we've been customers for many years now.
Any
Mhm.
other questions? What about sleep? Does a plant-based diet, will that help me sleep too better?
It does. A lot of the plant-based foods like raspberries and almonds, they actually help. They're sort of the precursors for melatonin, which is the hormone, our sleep hormone. So that can be one of the other beneficial effects. And our bodies really thrive on routine. So the more you can have that earlier, dinner time meal, to not eat afterwards, to turn your screens off, a couple hours before you're going to go to bed, all of these, really good sleep hygiene effects, can help us have a more restful sleep as well. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for hosting me tonight, and I'd love to, have all of you in the Plant Powered Challenge in January. Again, most of those events are, there's no cost. There are some plant-based cooking classes that do have a fee if you choose to join in on something like that, but the other events during the month, the webinars and whatnot, they're all free for you to join. And there's going to be a lot of great information shared there. And also, if you are looking for a plant-based physician and dietitian, that's what we have at our lifestyle medicine practice. So we have appointments available to see you for the conditions that you're trying to prevent or improve through plant-based nutrition and other lifestyle change.
So how do we get the hospital to stop selling pop in the?
It's a great question. I've tried. Yes.
Oh, it's terrible, isn't it?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Oh, sad.
I don't know.
Oh, sad.
I can't win. I can't fight every battle,
Yeah, I
honestly.
know. Well,
Um,
you get a lot of credit for what you do, and I'm just laugh when I see this pop machine in the Spectrum
yeah,
South Campus. It's like, what?
I know. Yes. Yes. We could do better. I agree. Yes.
got this wonderful thing, and we'll definitely share all the information. We don't have a huge following, but we're trying to make great strides to build a better bridge to better health in Grand Rapids. And we really appreciate your time. And I feel really encouraged to work harder at just becoming more healthy. So thank you.
Yeah, well, best of luck, and let's all look forward to hopefully great 2021.
Yeah.
All right, take care, everybody. Have a great evening.
Thank you so much.
All right,
Enjoy
you're
your
welcome.
meal.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.